July 1914. The world stood still, caught between disbelief and dread. News had spread like wildfire across Europe. The heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne was dead. The empire's pride had been shattered by a Serbian bullet in Sarajevo. In Vienna, grief turned into fury. In the corridors of power, revenge was being whispered. And within 1 month, that whisper would roar into the thunder of war. This is the story of how Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. The first domino to fall, and the beginning of the Great War. The funeral of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was a quiet affair stripped of royal ceremony by the very emperor who had once disapproved of his marriage. The empire mourned, but the people demanded justice. Newspapers screamed headlines. Serbia must be punished. A death demands a response. But the truth was far more complex. Austria-Hungary was not a single nation, it was an empire of many nationalities: Germans, Hungarians, Croats, Czechs, Poles, and Serbs, all bound together by a fragile political fabric. If that fabric tore, the empire would collapse. So, when a Serbian nationalist pulled the trigger in Sarajevo, Vienna's leaders saw more than a murder. They saw a threat to the empire's very survival. In the palace halls of Vienna, one man's voice rose above all others: Count Leopold von Berchtold, the Austro-Hungarian foreign minister. He was cold, determined, and utterly convinced that only a crushing blow could silence Serbia. The military elite agreed. They called it a punitive expedition. A strike that would teach Serbia a lesson and restore Austria's honor. But there was a problem. Serbia wasn't alone. Behind it stood Russia, the self-proclaimed protector of all Slavic peoples. Attacking Serbia might mean provoking the Russian bear. And perhaps even a European war. Still, the generals wanted to act. They just needed assurance that someone powerful had their back. July 5, 1914, a crucial day in Berlin. A secret telegram arrived at the court of Kaiser Wilhelm II. It was a plea from Vienna. Would Germany support Austria-Hungary if war came with Serbia and possibly with Russia? The Kaiser didn't hesitate. He gave what history calls the blank check. Germany promised full military and political support, no matter what. It was a reckless pledge. An open invitation for escalation. But to Austria-Hungary, it was the green light they'd been waiting for. Now they could move forward with confidence. And with vengeance in their hearts. On July 23, the Austrian ambassador delivered an ultimatum to Serbia. It was a document of 10 demands, harsh, humiliating, and deliberately designed to be rejected. Among them, Serbia must suppress all anti-Austrian propaganda. Serbia must dissolve nationalist organizations. And most outrageously, Austria must be allowed to send its own officials into Serbia to conduct investigations on Serbian soil. Serbia was given just 48 hours to respond. In Belgrade, panic spread. The Serbian cabinet met in secret, their faces pale under the flickering light of gas lamps. They wanted peace, but how could they surrender their sovereignty? Serbia's young king, Peter I, was frail but proud. He knew his small nation couldn't withstand the might of the Austro-Hungarian army alone. So Serbia turned to Russia. Tsar Nicholas II, cousin to the German Kaiser, sent words of support but hesitated to mobilize his troops. The Serbian government drafted a careful reply, accepting most of Austria's demands, but rejecting one: the clause that allowed Austrian agents to operate inside Serbia. It was a compromise. A last hope for peace. When the reply was handed over, Serbian Prime Minister Nikola Pašic reportedly said, "We are prepared to go to war, rather than be humiliated." In Vienna, the response was read and immediately dismissed. The decision had already been made. The Austrians called the Serbian reply insincere, a mere trick to buy time. That same evening, the order was given: prepare for war. The sound of marching boots echoed through the streets of Vienna. Posters went up calling for enlistment. Crowds cheered in patriotic fervor, believing the war would be short, clean, and victorious. No one imagined it would last 4 years. Consume empires? and kill millions. July 28, 1914. At precisely 11 a.m., the Austro-Hungarian government declared war on Serbia. Telegrams flashed across Europe. Austria-Hungary, finding it necessary to defend its rights and interests, considers itself henceforward in a state of war with Serbia. Cannon fire echoed down the Danube. The first shells struck the Serbian capital, Belgrade. Smoke rose over the city. Civilians fled. And somewhere in the chaos, an old woman crossed herself, whispering, "God have mercy on us all." The war declaration triggered a rapid chain reaction across Europe. Russia began partial mobilization. Germany warned Russia to stop. France prepared its army in silence. The great web of alliances, meant to protect Europe from war, now pulled it helplessly toward it. Within days, the continent was on fire. July 30th, Russia mobilizes. August 1st, Germany declares war on Russia. August 3rd, Germany declares war on France. August 4th, Britain declares war on Germany. The First World War had begun. And it all started with Austria's decision to punish a small Balkan nation. History often turns on pride. On the refusal to yield, the hunger for revenge. For Austria-Hungary, this war was meant to be a lesson to Serbia. Instead, it became a death sentence for their empire. The soldiers who marched off in July 1914, cheered by crowds and bathed in flowers, would return, if they returned at all, broken and silent. The mighty Austro-Hungarian Empire that had ruled Central Europe for centuries would crumble into dust by the war's end. And Serbia, though devastated, would rise again, battered but unbroken. In the days following the declaration, the newspapers printed endless proclamations. One Austrian paper wrote, "At last we can wash away the insult of Sarajevo." A Serbian paper replied bitterly, "They have chosen war over truth." Even the Kaiser himself, once full of bravado, began to worry as he saw the chain reaction unfolding. He wrote in his diary, "If only someone could have stopped it." But it was too late. The engines of war were already turning. And millions of men were being drawn into the abyss. As July turned to August, trains filled with troops rumbled across the continent. In the countryside, farmers paused to watch endless columns of soldiers disappear toward the horizon. Some waved flags. Some wept. In Vienna, church bells rang. In Belgrade, the bells tolled for the dead. And across Europe, mothers held their sons and whispered the same prayer, that they might come home again. But few of them ever would. It began with one death and one declaration. Austria-Hungary's war on Serbia wasn't just the beginning of a conflict. It was the moment humanity stepped across a line it could never uncross. A single act of revenge unleashed a storm that destroyed empires, reshaped continents, and changed the course of civilization. The men who signed the declaration believed they were defending their nation's honor. Instead, they opened the gates of hell. July 28, 1914. The day Europe ignited. The cannons thundered across the Balkans. And in that thunder, the old world began to die. From Vienna to London, from Moscow to Paris. No one yet understood what they had unleashed. But the war had begun. And there would be no turning back.